Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the collaboration space. I'm Nancy Lussier, and today we're going to be talking about creating a less digital and more human workplace with intelligent video. And with me to help me do that today is Lauren Simmen, who is the Director of Product Marketing at Crestron. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks, Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing good. Like we were talking about, it cooled off a little bit here today. It's October.
Yep.
Even in
The fall
Florida,
is
it's cooling off.
yeah, the I'm in Rhode Island and it's definitely getting cold up here.
Yep, yep. The winter's coming. The winter's coming. So, Lauren, maybe you can kick off our conversation and kind of share with us some of the insights that you're hearing from customers as to what are the challenges that they're having now with the hybrid workplace when it comes to creating that human experience.
Definitely. And this is a passion or a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've been a full-time remote employee for over a decade. And so I've seen it just from, let's have audio conferencing to
Hmm.
the bringing in video to, now this everyone was home with COVID and now this new world that we're in. So it's been cool to see the evolution. But with that comes challenges. Every time new innovation or a new challenge comes out, we have to figure out how to adapt to it. When everybody went home for COVID, we all had those little squares, right? We all had this what we call equal pixel
You're
real
all
estate.
The Brady Bunch, or the
Exactly.
Muppets. Yeah. Hmm.
And we didn't realize how difficult video conferencing was prior to COVID until we hit COVID. And what I mean by that is back before COVID hit, and back before we all went home, we were just excited to, as a remote person, I was just excited to see the faces of the people in the room. And it made me feel like, hey, I'm part of this conversation. As everybody had those equal squares, that Brady Bunch thing going on, now that have some people back in the office and some people are remote, there's a few struggles that we have. One is just engagement with the remote participants. So when we're sitting in a room, where our natural reaction is to speak to the person you're talking to, whether it's across the table, whether it's next to you, you're not really thinking about where the camera is placed in the room. So you may not be looking at the camera, which means the remote person is going to see the back of your head.
Or the side of your head. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Or
Absolutely.
even what becomes even harder is this cognitive dissonance, this decision making process that you have to make when you're sitting in a room. Now we're more aware of remote participants. So I find it's actually harder to be in the room because we're aware that, hey, there's somebody on this far end, but this person's the one who's addressing me. So who do I look at? Who do
Yeah.
I
Where do I
address? Who do I
look? Where do I look and when? Yeah.
Exactly. And it takes away, whether or not we realize it or not, but behaviorally it takes us away from those meeting spaces and what we're actually trying to accomplish in that meeting. So that's one of the struggles is making the connection between remote and in person natural, without us
Yeah.
having to, go leaps and bounds to try and make sure everybody's included. There's also FOMO, right? There's from a remote participant. I live 200 miles away from the office, so I'm not going to go in all the time,
Hmm.
but if everybody's in there, I want to be engaged, but I also don't want to be rude. I want to be able to see everybody's faces and see body language so I know when is it appropriate for me to jump in or when is it appropriate for me to make a comment or simple things like reading the room. If somebody
Hmm.
tells a joke in the room and everybody kind of sits back and puts their arm crosses their arms, I know that that joke didn't land very well, so I probably
Yeah.
shouldn't add to it, or vice
Yeah.
versa. It's that bringing the human element of this back
Yeah,
together.
yeah. And I
And
think everyone seeing you as a participant with your facial expressions, then people will you kind of have cues as when you're ready to jump in and say something. So it's important for people to see you too, being a remote
exactly,
participant.
I mean, Teams and Zoom and all of the other conferencing technologies have done a great job of, being able to raise your hand. But to your point, if 10 people are sitting in a room and you've got four people that are remote, if those four people raise their hand, chances are they're not looking at the screen to see who's raised their hand and when they want to talk, and it just breaks up the conversation. So that's the biggest challenge that we're trying to or trying to get over, because this also plays into engagement, and in
Mhm.
employee retention and things like that in this new workforce, which is all new elements that we have to try and account for.
Yeah. So, what are some of the ideas that you can share as how to make that experience better, make it equitable, and keep everyone engaged and therefore productive and, accomplishing the goals of the meeting?
Absolutely. There's a couple of different areas, and I've been spending a lot of time with Crestron looking at it, not just from the meeting space, because that's one part of it. The four walls, the display, people coming in to meet about a specific purpose. When you're looking at trying to build engagement and productivity in those spaces, the biggest thing is really trying to ensure that every person who's sitting in every chair can get The remote participant can get a direct view of their face. They can also see that composite view of what the room looks like, so you can do those things like reading the room. So it's really looking at the design and the functionality of each meeting room to make sure that you have the right intelligent video technology. Intelligent video technology has grown significantly over the last really, 3 years. It's gone super gangbusters and all the different things that have come in. But when do I need speaker tracking? When do I need group framing? When do I need video switching? Right? When do I need all these technologies? It's really based on the functionality of the room. The other side to that we're looking at is not just those four walls. As I'm sure you guys at AVI-SPL have seen, these mixed use or common spaces are now becoming gathering points. And when I go into the office, if my coworker and I are sitting there having a conversation, it's like, oh, it'd be really cool if we called in Sam because we want to get his opinion on something. No matter where we are, we have to have that capability to video call somebody. Things like town halls are becoming more and more popular. They kind of went away for a while. Now
Yeah.
they're coming back as a way to bring the remote workforce and the in-person workforce together. Well, you can't do a town hall in a 10-person conference space. You've got to have these larger auditoriums or these larger mixed use spaces. You got to think about putting video there as well to make sure that you can accomplish those needs.
Yeah, and you talked a lot about how you've been remote for a long time, but now the workforce has changed after the pandemic. Everybody wants to at least be hybrid or fully remote. So the people that we're working with have changed that group. You mentioned you were in Rhode Island. You're not near the headquarters. I
Mhm.
happen to live near Tampa, but not everybody on my team does. So I get the idea of enabling every space, every collaboration space to do those video calls. So, and is it just one camera now that we're using per space, or what are some of the other ideas that Crestron's bringing to the table with intelligent video?
Yeah, it really depends. And it's a great question because, again, it goes back to let's look at the space. Um, for smaller areas, you have great solutions like the Panicast 50 from Jabra, where you have three cameras in a video bar sitting in the front of the room, which is going to give you a lot of those effects. But once you get over a certain number of people, it's gonna you're gonna start to warp, and you're not
Hmm.
gonna be able to get everybody the same way that you want. When you get into these larger spaces, a single camera is just not going to cut it. You have to have multiple cameras in the space. Whether if anybody was at Infocom and saw our Sightline demonstration or has called into our CEC, our Crestron Experience Center in New Jersey, and
Hmm.
has seen the camera switching technology that we have now with the One Beyond acquisition of their technologies, we have cameras placed at ISE. We had 7 cameras throughout a room for
Wow.
a 15-person meeting space.
Yep.
What that allowed us to do was every single person, no matter where they sat, whether they were standing, whether they were presenting in the front of the room, had the ability to have a camera trained on them when they were speaking. And for larger meetings where you're doing a lot more collaboration, you really do want that experience. Now, if you're in a presentation, if somebody's just presenting quarterly results or annual
Hmm.
results, you may only need a speaker tracker at the front of the room and then a camera showing the whole space. Like I said, it really depends, but we're seeing a lot more, especially in these larger spaces, putting multiple cameras to use. But that requires some back end smarts as well, right? It requires,
Yeah.
and some sort of switching technology with Crestron. It's our Automate VX. What that does is, as somebody's speaking, it tells the camera, "Hey, Nancy's speaking over in seat 7. Train a camera onto her." And then if I speak again, it says, "Okay, Lauren's speaking. Now go put that camera back to Lauren." So that way you don't see that pan and zoom that you would. You're actually physically
Hmm.
switching cameras throughout the space.
And I like that that's going to do it itself because when we're talking about engagement, I don't want to have to walk into a room and worry about how that tech is going to work. I just want it to work, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of that with Crush Runner. We that's one of the things that we talk about is the fact that we can integrate all of these technologies, whether it's the audio being pushed throughout the room or the video being pushed to different displays or the camera technology. You just walk in, start your meeting, and it magically all works.
I like that. I like the sound of that. Well, Lauren, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I think this was great information for everyone to be listening to and hope it helps everyone. Thanks to our listeners out there who joined us today. Don't forget you can follow us on YouTube at AVI-SPL Info so you'll never miss a video podcast. You can also listen to the audio stream on your favorite podcast app. Just search for the collaboration space. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. For more information, visit avispl.com/Crestron.